Mysteries, the podcast. Eliza, what is our podcast about?
Resolved Mysteries is a podcast where we rewatch episodes of Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. You can watch along with us on Amazon Prime. And this is our 5th episode, and it's following along with the 5th episode on Amazon Prime. So,
Season 1.
Season 1. Yeah. And we laugh, we cry, we research, we tell stories.
So, episode 5 is a big one for us, and we actually broke it into 2 parts because we have 2 super heavy hitter stories to cover, and we want each story to have the time it deserves. So, today you'll be listening to part 1, which will be covering D.B. Cooper, and tomorrow we'll be dropping another episode covering the boys on the tracks and a Sportsball story.
Sportsballs!
So, we have been getting a lot of support, oddly, from...
We are surprised.
We are surprised, and we are so grateful in a completely sincere way that anybody is listening to this.
Yes.
And we want to give a shout out to, her name is Ava, and she sent us a message via Instagram that was really supportive and kind. And then, queen that she is, had the follow through to also leave us a review on iTunes, which is so important for a podcast, a small little podcast like ours. So Ava, thank you so much. Your handle is Ava_713. You are the best, and
we all got warm fuzzies.
Yeah, we immediately.
It was really nice.
Yeah, we immediately texted each other, and we were like, "Oh my God, someone's listening!" And it's really, really nice to have that because we work super hard on this, and sometimes it feels like we're just sort of yelling into the ether, and we don't know if anybody's listening.
Yeah, so nice.
Yeah, so
thanks, Ava.
Ava, thank you. You're awesome. We're also getting a lot of really great feedback on Facebook. Someone said that they were excited to listen, and then again had the follow through to comment again and say that they really enjoyed it and to tell us to keep up the good work. And yeah, it feels really good. Along with that, we received our first 1-star review.
Woo!
Ow! And I guess there were mixed feelings. I don't know. Not really. Medium mixed feelings. But
well, first of all, I would like to say that we were all 3 in a king bed together.
Oh yeah,
sitting under a giant blanket, being really cozy when we discovered our 1-star review.
Yeah, we were feeling really great, and then I broke the news of the 1-star review, and some out of the 3 of us got a little sad panda about it. And I brought it up to my partner, and he said, "Oh my God, that's awesome! It's a rite of passage." So, to the person who gave us the 1-star review, your constructive criticism was very valuable, and we hear you, and we see you, and we hope you got that shit sorted out in Arizona. So there you go.
If you want to leave us a review, please do so. 5 stars would be awesome if you really feel that way. And we love nice messages like Ava gave us. So on Instagram, we're at @re_solved mysteries. And you can contact us through our website.
resolvedmysteriesPodcast.com.
And for every review we get, we are donating to the ACLU for the month of October. And in November, we're going to choose another charity that we're really excited about. We've decided on it already, and it's a local Portland charity, and we're super into it. So if you leave us a review, it benefits us, obviously, and then also it will benefit others. Okay. Let's talk about what we're doing this episode.
Okay.
So, episode 5, I don't know if you've heard of this story. It's about a man named D.B. Cooper, who, I didn't know anything about this, jumped off a plane.
Stop it. She knew the most.
I love it. Took a skyjacked, which is my fucking new favorite word.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could have another child because I would make skyjack its middle name.
I loved that when I heard it too.
I know. I'm like, that is so sexy.
Yeah.
It's
I
fuck
hadn't heard that before.
Jack that sky. Yeah, he skyjacks a flight and demands a ransom and some parachutes. Parachutes off of the plane, and we never know what happens to him. And some people say that he's alive. Some people say he's dead.
fortunately for you guys, this has been going on since 1971. So buckle up because it's going to be a fucking minute before it's over. Karlin, what are you talking about this week?
I am going to be telling the story of the Boys on the Tracks, which I know probably our audience has listened to. Many other pods do this same story. So it's great
classic.
because the more times you hear it, the better you'll understand it. It's really, really, really layered. And I am the queen of procrastination, so I'm used to like doing my story last minute, and I cannot do that with this story, as I've learned. So it's a little bit of a like pile of information. I'm just gonna vomit on you guys.
So I just want to say, for all intents and purposes, when I was hanging out with Karlin last weekend, I asked her what she was doing out of the house because her segment was Boys on the Tracks, and she laughed at me, but I meant it.
She meant it.
I meant it. So
you know, please don't call me out. I'm just going to tell you all the things that I know, probably out of order, and you can totally write me a comment about it.
But be nice.
Eliza, you this week have
get
the
ready.
most true dream story for Eliza. It
I'm
involves
gripping my seat right now. It's just
I know. It involves all of the things that the three of us find fucking fascinating. Like investing and sports.
collecting memorabilia.
Rings, uniforms,
Cards.
white men who spend too much money on shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly, where last episode we were talking about being at the mercy of the show. I would like to say that maybe this is the first episode where one of us truly got boned
Yeah.
in the segment selection.
Walking into the room where we do our podcast, Alison and Karlin are both furiously still thinking about their stories, working on their stories, hoping they get their stories right. And I just walked in and started eating my salad because,
She did have a kale salad with her.
It looked amazing.
and I mean, you know, it's not that deep. So I get an easy week this week.
Yeah.
You did say you liked baseball. It's not like we just completely
Oh,
gave you
it's
a
true.
shaft.
I do like baseball, but I don't care at all. and honestly, I haven't watched baseball in so long. But so yeah, I like it more than all of us, but also I don't care about it at all. So
Well, it's like
I'm still
like
interested in hearing about it.
I like baseball, but I don't need to know about its jewelry.
right,
Yeah.
I will say I'm just gonna give you a name, and that is Charlie Sheen might be involved.
Okay, so we're currently winning. That's awesome.
Teaser.
And now you have to do.
Oh,
the
now
thing.
it's my turn. Okay. All right. So grab a glass of wine and a blanket or something and get comfy because we're about to cover D.B. Cooper. And it's the first segment of episode 5, and it's a mysterious legend, obviously. November 24th, 1971 at 8:42 p.m., 10,000 feet above Washington State. A man now known as D.B. Cooper jumps from a 727 with $200,000 in cash assumed strapped to his body. D.B. Cooper is a misnomer, however. The skyjacker gave the ticket person at the Portland airport the name Dan Cooper. It became D.B. when the name was misprinted in a newspaper.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. I don't really go into this a lot, but it's theorized that Dan Cooper took his name from a Belgian comic book where the main protagonist was a skydiver during World War II.
Cool.
Yeah, and since it wasn't published here in the United States, they think that he might have been abroad, so obviously in the military in Europe at some point.
That is so cool.
And such like a tidbit for him only.
Oh,
you know what
I
I
know.
mean? Like that's like his little nerd thing to himself.
All he does is just like put Easter eggs everywhere
Yeah.
for everyone. It's awesome. So as he's purchasing the ticket, Cooper confirms that the plane being used for the flight is indeed a 727. Come to find out, he chose the 727-100 aircraft because it was ideal for a bailout escape, due not only to its aft air stair, basically a back staircase that came out while the plane was moving, which I don't know why that was a feature to begin with, but also the high afterward placement of all 3 engines, which allowed a reasonably safe jump without risk of immediate incineration by jet exhaust. Yeah. It also had single-point fueling capability, a recent innovation that allowed all tanks to be refueled rapidly through a single fuel port. It also had the ability, unusual for a commercial jetliner, to remain in slow, low-altitude flight without stalling.
Right.
So the first thing I thought of when they said 10,000 feet was flights are usually at 30,000 feet. So because most planes can't fly at 10,000 feet,
Right.
you know.
For a sustained amount of time.
And a large plane, you know, like a smaller plane can. So Cooper boards Northwest Orient Flight 305 nonstop to Seattle from Portland.
What?
Yes. He's the last aboard, and he sits all the way in the back. Cooper passes flight attendant Florence Schaffner, I think it's Schaffner, a note and tells her to read it. It says something to the effect of, "Miss, I have a bomb." And at first she thinks he's kidding. Then he opens a briefcase and she sees a large battery with 6 sticks of dynamite wrapped around it. First question so far in this case is, where does one obtain 6 sticks of dynamite? Because it should be a lot harder to do.
Also surprising that sticks of dynamite exist outside of like Looney Tunes.
Okay.
Like he really had sticks of dynamite.
Yes. And the only thing that I know about sticks of dynamite is from Lost.
Yes.
And apparently, like, you're not supposed to flop them around in your briefcase.
No.
Right? I mean, I know
So-
those sticks
But
of
again,
dynamite.
like movies and television are where we see sticks of dynamite.
Yes. Yes. That's why I was like, is this something you get from like the firecracker store? Like the fire,
Or
like
did
in Pennsylvania?
he just make something look like a stick of dynamite?
Yeah,
and it's not
exactly.
really?
And like when you're 10,000 feet in the air, you're not going to call someone's bluff, right?
Yeah.
You're going to just
You're not going to be like, oh, let me look at that closer.
Yeah. Let me touch that. So Schaffner goes to the cockpit to tell the rest of the flight crew, and they notify air traffic control. Also, I should say that the story is being told to us by Ralph Himmelsbach, and he was the lead FBI agent assigned to the case. He eventually ended up writing a book, and he has been with the case since 1971. In the meanwhile, Cooper has demanded $200,000, which is $1,238,814,000 by 2018 standards.
Yes, please.
Okay, that puts it in perspective because I was like, come on, like
Right?
ask for a little more.
Well, when I saw the 200K, the first thing I thought of was John Benet Ramsey. Like it's just like such a specific amount that I was like, oh, he has a debt. But no, he was just like,
That's
it would be the equivalent of me being like, I just want $1 million.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
It's $1 million.
so he also demands 4 parachutes, 2 front facing and 2 rear facing. He also tells the flight crew that the plane is to remain in the air until the money and parachutes are ready in Seattle. They're also told not to inform the other passengers on the plane, which I don't think they would do anyway. Like,
No,
all it takes is
why would you want mass panic on top of all of that?
Yeah, like all it takes is like one quote unquote hero, and
Yeah.
the whole plane can potentially blow up. So
Yeah, for sure.
I can't imagine them being like, imagine the captain coming on like that intercom being like, so we're flying at 10,000 feet in the air, and there's a man with a bomb in the back of the plane. Everyone just remain calm. We'll be coming through the cabin with refreshments in a moment.
The seatbelt sign is on. Please do not get up.
Does anyone need coffee?
Yeah, I was like, I don't think you had to worry about that, but whatever. Cooper said that the plane had to be refueled in Seattle and no one could leave the plane until his demands were met. He told the crew to land when the money and the parachutes were ready and not to taxi, just stay on the runway. So the FBI asked the airline if they want to pay the ransom, which I think this is the only crime ever where the FBI is like, what do you want to do? You know, like,
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
right? Like, but that always happens. I think, you know, even if a person or a child is kidnapped, the parents have the ability to pay the ransom. It's just suggested that they don't. Doesn't the FBI? I mean, I think it's different when it's a plane full of people and you're a commercial airliner. But I think on the individual level, don't they say to not pay the ransom?
So wait, is the FBI saying, do you want to pay it like this $200,000
Yeah.
would come out of the airline's account?
Honey,
it's
yes.
not just
Well, they asked that, but then when they said the FBI was getting the money together, it made it seem like they were getting the money
No,
together.
it was the airline's money.
oh my
So it was the airline's money. So the airline was like, we're good for $200,000. And then the FBI went and took the bills.
But it's just crazy that there's no assistance with that. Like
I did not realize that.
multiple lives are at risk, and do you guys want to pay it?
The only reason, well, yeah. So, and I mean,
Whoa.
Himmelsbach says like they immediately agreed to pay it. Like there's no shade. He's like, they were probably like, yes, yes, please, God, yes. Like,
Oh, yeah,
just pay
totally.
this.
Of course. Well, and half the people on there are their staff. So
Exactly. The FBI photographs the money, records the serial numbers, and bundles it up. 10,000 $20 bills were assembled in straps of $100 bills to a strap and then banded together. The money weighed 21 pounds. I was wondering why taking serial numbers is a thing. Like, I know it's a thing, and I can tell you about it if you want to know later, because it comes up again.
Okay.
And if you know about it, then I don't have to tell you. But I was like, why do they always talk about doing that?
Well, like, is it a way to trace it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
That's what
is.
I'm
But like,
assuming.
yeah, it is absolutely a way to trace it.
Yeah.
That's why they do it. But I was sort of like wondering about the reality of them tracing it and how they could.
That's what I was
especially
wondering
then.
about, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
because-
So I can tell you about it later.
Yeah.
At 5:43 p.m., Flight 305 lands in Seattle and taxis to a remote location on the airfield. The FBI pulls up with the money and the parachutes with snipers trained on the plane. A flight attendant, and I wrote earlier in my notes that they don't interview both for some reason, so maybe she didn't want to be
Yeah.
on Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Comes to the car and runs the money and chutes onto the plane. Here, Stack mentions that one of the chutes was defective and wouldn't open under any circumstances, and that neither the FBI nor the flight crew knew. And I thought it would come back later in the episode, but it doesn't.
How did they know that?
Okay, I know why, but that's like part of the update. Like, I thought that they would be like, and then,
Right.
and it didn't go
I
anywhere.
totally forgot that they never came
Yes.
back to that.
Also, I don't know, since that information, the information was known that one of the parachutes was non-functional. And I think that in 1972, the FBI addresses the non-functional parachute more. So that's part of the update. I don't know. Maybe they didn't think it was important, but I thought it was kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
I've found some discrepancies too between what they say in updates and what I read
Yeah.
later. It's
Well, I
interesting.
think for an update, they're just trying to wrap it up. You know, they're
Yeah.
like, what can we say in the smallest amount of time that's going to give people the most amount of satisfaction?
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think talking about parachutes would be one of the
Mm-hmm.
things. So the flight crew and the FBI were worried that Cooper would use 3 of the 4 parachutes to take hostages. However, obviously, this would have meant death for the hostages, because you can't just jump out of a plane and know when to pull your parachute and know how to land. And then I guess I believe this, but the passengers were oblivious to what was going on and just thought that the plane was delayed. And in everything I read,
yeah,
that's what it
and
said.
like props to that staff for
Amazing.
how do you not act terrified? So
Yeah.
it's amazing that they were able to just be like, "Do you want some peanuts?"
yeah.
Well,
And
thankfully, it was a Portland to Seattle flight, which even today are
True.
not always full.
yeah.
And short.
And on the reenactment, it was
There were like 6 people on the plane. I was like, what? Does everyone get their own row? What is this?
dream.
Yes. So the fueling kept being delayed for some reason, and Cooper was getting super agitated. They mentioned a couple of times that he was getting increasingly paranoid, really agitated. So the pilot, whose name is William Scott, called air traffic control and was basically like, if you guys are trying to fuck us by delaying this, stop it, fuel us, and just get us back in the air.
Yeah.
Which
Smart.
obviously, because
Yeah.
you know they were trying to stall. And the flight attendant says that Cooper had them pull all the shades down so you could have a million snipers trained on that plane.
Yep.
But he's not stupid, obviously. He just skyjacked. So
Yeah.
And that
super
was
smart.
I thought that was interesting too. Even that didn't arouse suspicion on or with the people on
passengers.
the plane.
Yeah.
I know. I think like 71, so people started flying what in the 40s? 71, like, so people probably didn't know what to expect.
Yes,
so
true.
So
That's so true.
if a flight attendant told you to do something, you just kind of did it and then waited to see what else was going to happen. I don't know. And I say, like, you know, I don't remember flying pre 9/11. I know I did,
Oh yeah.
but I have no idea
It's
what
so
it was
true.
like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't remember. If anyone listening remembers, if you want to tell us about it, because I've traveled all over the world, but I did most of it after 9/11. So I've always just thought this was the way it was, you know?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Cooper lets the passengers off of the plane, but keeps one of the flight attendants. Florence says that she was let go, but then Cooper changed his mind and kept the other flight attendant. I was like, that's some shitty luck. I wonder what the other flight attendant would say. The passengers had no idea that anything was wrong until they got off the plane and the FBI was there to meet them, and no one could provide any information on Cooper because who scans the other seats when you're on a plane to look for a possible hijacker? After the passengers deplane, and it's Cooper, the flight crew, and the one flight attendant, he makes some more demands. He tells the crew to fly towards Mexico City at 10,000 feet elevation and to go 200 miles per hour. And I'm assuming that that's ideal jumping conditions. I actually jumped out of a plane once, but I didn't do any work. I was just
You
strapped.
did?
I did. It was horrible.
Girl, I thought we have talked about would you want to skydive before.
I don't want to do it again, but I have absolutely done it. Yes.
I did not know you had done
And
it.
I went with people. We have some friends that have gone dozens of times.
Ew.
Yeah. I did it one time, and when we got to the ground, my legs were shaking so badly that I like fell over.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
Ooh, it makes me think of that case file about the.
Yes. Well, and the funny thing is, I didn't even know about that. It's super fucking scary.
No
even
matter
without
what.
like
Sabotage.
it goes against all of your natural instinct. You are jumping out of a plane.
So you had a person on your back.
Yeah. So I was strapped to his chest and his stomach.
right.
And then we jumped. He was above me. And then he pulled the cord and all of that stuff.
I did not know you had done that.
And obviously, my jump instructor was like some Patrick Swayze Point Break motherfucker, like frosted blonde tips, like
of course.
total bro. Yeah, he was like, "Are you stoked?" And I was like, "Nah, I don't think I'm stoked anymore. Now that I'm in the plane and I see how high up we are."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I would just pee the whole way down.
Yeah,
So you, after doing it, you would not do it again.
I would never do it again.
You would never do it, right?
I like to believe that I could get myself to, but
too.
I would be very scared.
Me too.
You could like get yourself to, but that.
It's
But I
not
would definitely
something-
want to be strapped as another person.
and I
Well,
didn't.
they
feel,
make you do that now.
Yeah,
anyway.
you have to have like something like 15 jump spires with another person before you can train to be jumped by yourself. I didn't even get like the like when I landed, I wasn't even like, "Wah," like the adrenaline
Really?
rush.
You were just like,
because I was too petrified.
You were in panic.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, my body. I don't remember it at all. Like my body shut
you
down.
shut down.
Yeah, yeah. And then the guy. Because you can buy photos and video, and it's just me giving like the thumbs down the entire time.
You're like, no, thank you.
It's like we're at 10,000 feet.
I wanna get off.
Thumbs down. We're at 8,000 feet. Thumbs down. 5,000 feet. Thumbs down. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we're hitting the ground. Get ready. Get ready. And I just like fall over.
my God, girl.
It's terrifying. So, like I was saying, I'm assuming that's ideal jumping conditions. They say that they have to refuel in Reno, and Cooper agrees. And I also make mention that a plane in the 80s couldn't get from Seattle to Mexico City without having to stop and refuel. That's bananas. Like, that's
Because they
insane.
refueled in Seattle too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just had.
They can't go from Seattle to Mexico City.
That's crazy.
Yeah, without stopping in Reno, without stopping in Nevada. That's insane. Like,
Also terrifying.
yeah, because you can fly from LA to fucking, like, Australia and not have to stop to refuel now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he also asks the pilot, or tells the pilot, to take off with the rear stairwell down, and it's called the aft. So the pilot is like, nope, I literally can't take off if it's down. I guess the plane wouldn't let you. So Cooper agrees to let it come up for takeoff. He seems to know a lot about the plane and obviously parachuting, so it's thought that he must have had some military experience. At 7:37, Flight 304 takes off again, leaving Seattle. The air traffic control informs the other planes in the area about what's going on and tells the other planes to get the fuck out of the way so 305 can do its thing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being the other pilots in the other planes like, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God that's not me
Yeah.
right now. Thank God that's not me right now.
I love how they said it in the episode. They said, what is the flight number? 403?
305.
305.
305 had the sky to itself.
Yes.
Which is so creepy for the
It is,
flight.
yeah.
Yeah, imagine.
Yeah, they're like alone.
Yeah, yeah. And then I started thinking, because I don't fly a lot, but I fly often enough where I was like, I wonder what the other passengers were thinking. Like, why are we still in the air? Like, I don't know how long they sort of had these planes flying around the airspace, because they must have been flying around.
Like
They probably
planes going
Oh,
around.
Yeah.
Right.
So they
yeah.
not the passengers on 305, the passengers
were
on
off.
all of the other planes.
Right.
Because you have to think they probably didn't let anybody go in or out while 305 landed, while it was being
Well, yeah,
refueled.
probably a lot of them just turned around and went back to where they came from.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of people were inconvenienced that day. That's all I'm saying.
But they
Air
also
travel.
didn't blow up, so that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
should
a win.
say
Karlin's right. That's a win.
Obviously, the people involved, like the flight attendants and the pilot, are traumatized from this situation, but it is easier to make light of this skyjacking because, thank God, no one was actually hurt.
Of course. And I really do think William Scott, the pilot, handled himself amazingly.
Even just like convincing this guy who has a bomb, like, no, I'm not going to fly with the fucking stairs down.
Yeah, and I don't
whatever.
actually know whether or not you can, but
He was
like,
assertive enough to be like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and Cooper was probably like, okay. Otherwise,
Like,
I don't
those
get
are
to
my-
go anywhere.
Yeah,
Which was
exactly.
the first thing that made me think maybe that wasn't a real bomb. But
Yeah.
It's a weird power struggle. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's also like, well, this pilot is actually in
A pilot.
control.
Yeah, exactly. There's also apparently a storm moving into the flight path, which I'm like, can this get worse?
Of course.
It's Seattle in November, so it rains a lot. So once they're back in the air, Cooper tells the remaining flight attendant to go into the cockpit and close the first class curtain. And as she's going into the cockpit, she sees Cooper tying something to his body with rope, presumably the money. A short time later, the light flashed on in the cockpit, indicating that the rear door had been opened. At 8:12 p.m., there was a noticeable change in air pressure, and Cooper had jumped somewhere over the southern forests of Washington. They show his flight path, where they assumed he jumped, and we'll post it. They think he landed near or in the Lewis River or Lake Merwin, 20 miles north of Portland. Stack mentions that since Cooper, all 727s were modified so their back stairs don't go down.
Yep.
Sounds like a good idea. Okay.
And the door can't open during flight.
Yes, which
Obvi.
come on.
Seems like we should have figured that out earlier.
I mean,
I don't know.
How many like airplane movies do you need to see before you know that's a bad idea? You know?
It's
okay.
still early.
It
It was early.
Yeah, I mean, it was 71.
Like you
so.
said, not a lot of people flew all the time.
Yeah. And I have I think that probably any smaller plane was also used for military stuff, right? So like Boeing wasn't making just a whole bunch of passenger jet liners. Like they were kind of like, oh, we'll put some seats in here,
Right.
in this military plane.
Yeah.
So in the episode, now we're on to theories. Frank Howe, who I don't know if they introduced him earlier in this segment and I missed it, but I went back. And I'm still wondering who the hell is Frank Howe. And I tried to quickly look him up, but I couldn't find out why this person's opinion should matter. I mean, it was a quick search, so I didn't really dig deep, but I don't know why he ended up on Unsolved Mysteries. I don't know what his professional DB Cooper credentials are, I guess is what I'm saying. Because after I couldn't find anything, I was like, is he just like a guy really into DB Cooper? Like, were they fishing?
Did they not put a little subtitle under his
I
name?
couldn't find it. I
Weird.
scrubbed through like a couple times.
I can't remember which one that is. Tell me what
I don't
he
either.
says.
Oh, I'll tell you
Yeah.
what he says. So, Frank Howe says that Cooper is alive and that if he landed in the lake, he could have made it to the shore before hypothermia set in. And then I did look it up. The average temperature in Lake Merwin is between 55 and 40 degrees. So he's right. Cooper could have survived anywhere between 30 to 120 minutes before hypothermia set in. Apparently, a large white object was seen in Merwin, Lake Merwin, but when the divers looked for it, they didn't find anything. Conversely, Himmelsbach says that it's highly unlikely that Cooper survived. He comes up with a pretty random scenario stating that Cooper was most likely injured and crawled his way to a stream for water and died there.
Perish there.
Perished.
I mean, that's not totally random. Just he would have had to have water. Like they
It's-
were saying, they knew he didn't have water on him.
It's so specific.
Just say he's dead.
The reenactment
guess.
is so specific that it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'm not supposed to like this guy, but he's really suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, I say I don't know how he came up with the story. He doesn't offer any evidence, but others say that Cooper couldn't have survived very long in the dense forest with just a business suit.
And then he said something about, too, like, it's important what he had in his pockets.
Yeah, because that's all he had.
Oh, how?
To survive.
Let me tell you a little bit about how. Okay, here we go.
Mystery Man How.
How has an answer for that. We don't know what Cooper had under his suit. Maybe he was wearing long johns. We also don't know what Cooper had in his pockets. Hal reminds us that, quote, as long as a man has a knife, a cigarette lighter, and the clothes on his back, he could have lived indefinitely out there.
No.
I would say indefinitely is a stretch, but I do love the idea of a 1970s Don Draper fucking making his way through the forest. Eliza's like, ugh, misogynist. Making his way through the forest.
Well, and I think that's what makes him like such an intriguing like image and
Yeah.
like figure is that he's like in this business suit and
Yes.
he's, you know,
And
jumping from a
I
plane.
forgot this, but when I was like, doing research, I forgot for a long time people thought Mad Men was going to end with Don Draper being DB Cooper.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For a really long time. And I think the creator was like, never said that. It was sort of like one of those things where
out of nowhere.
someone said it on the internet and it kind of like people wanted it
blew
so
up.
badly it took over the narrative. But yeah. And it was funny. I said Don Draper-esque before I remembered that
That's
it actually,
interesting.
people actually thought
Yeah.
the show was going to end. He says that he thinks he buried his parachute, which means that he would have to know how to repack a parachute, which isn't something that everybody knows, even people that parachute.
No.
And the briefcase. And then this is where he loses me. He put the cash in his coat, which, Frank, how you're adorable. $200,000 is 21 pounds.
21 pounds of cash.
I don't know how big your pockets would have to be.
You would have to have a suit made to hold that.
Yeah.
Or like some sort of undergarment that had.
Yeah, in order
pockets
to
in
do
it.
that, you would probably have to have it tailored, unless you can
Exactly.
also sew along with parachuting and knowing about planes, which means that someone would be like, hey, I sewed a weird coat in
Right.
Portland.
I put like a hidden lining.
Yeah,
pocket in
exactly.
here,
It's
yeah.
like 21 pounds of money doesn't just go into your pockets.
I wish though.
He's a skyjacker of all trades.
He is. He's a seamstress, parachuter. Then Howe says that Cooper probably went to a big city and forgot himself, like he's fucking Felicity. It's pretty clear from the smile on Howe's face that he is just living vicariously through Cooper and doesn't really know anything. I mean, I'm totally with him. I'd love to have been DB Cooper and gotten away, but I'm still wondering what Howe's doing on television. Like, why is he?
Why are we
did-
listening
you
to you,
here?
Hal?
Why did he just waste my time the way I am now wasting yours? Like, so Stack then tells us that for years, no clues surfaced until November 1978, when a hunter found a sign from Flight 305 from its back stairwell. Then 15 months later, a little boy finds $5,000 on the Columbia River shoreline.
Best day.
Fucking Goonies
Was
moment.
that not me?
Like,
Could have been.
Dream.
Could have been.
it could have been either of you ladies. What were you doing? The money is waterlogged and deteriorated, but the serial numbers match, so that is super cool. Then Himmelsbach reminds us that not one bill has come up in circulation since the skyjacking, and I wrote, he is no fun. So,
Is this where you're going to tell us about how they know that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because that's what I was wondering is how are we scanning for these serial numbers?
okay, so the next slide of my notes is in all bold, and it says, do you want to know how the money's tracked?
Oh my gosh. We don't know each other well at all.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, these fucking girls don't know how the money's tracked. Let me tell you. Okay, so stolen money today, when the money is counted in the machine at the bank, that like, what is that?
Oh, nice.
That was-
That's all you need right
Oh my
there.
god!
Perfect sound
I'm not
effect.
keeping that in because that is a nightmare to listen to after I've
it's
listened to
really
us
good.
popping and breathing into microphones. No.
It was spot on.
What is the money counting machine
Yeah,
where
yeah,
the
yeah,
monies
I
go
know.
quickly through?
Keep that in.
Yeah, it also can scan the serial numbers and place it into a
Oh, wow.
database.
Even
Okay.
then.
No.
But so it has to pass through
Today.
a bank for that to
There
happen.
were no databases in 1972.
But when they show, yeah, you're right.
But so it has to pass through a bank for it to be accounted for.
yes, absolutely.
So that's what I'm wondering.
Absolutely. So then if a serial number hits from a certain bank, the police can trace the dollar back, right? But in the 70s, there were no databases because there were no computers. I mean, computers were the size of a room, you know? So the serial numbers were mainly used to prove after the fact. So, like, if the police had suspicions you committed a crime, they raided your house and they found the money.
Yeah.
So basically, the crime would have had already have to have been committed, and then they would hopefully find it
Right.
later.
But it wouldn't just be, oh, they spent this money at the store.
and that's what I was
and
like-
it was found. Right.
I was like, everyone always acts like these serial numbers, but
That's true.
I wonder how frequently people are caught through serial numbers, you know?
yeah.
Right.
Especially back then. Would you
Well,
have like a
and-
notebook?
Cooper's not an idiot. He's not going to go deposit the money.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
Anyone who steals money
that's
is
a-
not going to use a bank.
And that's a large question too.
Yeah.
Like, money laundering is really expensive. And like,
Yeah.
it's usually reserved for crime syndicates, not for some guy with $200,000. If he would have had that money laundered, he would have lost like more than half of it. So
Right.
he could have never spent the money. He must have known that, you know, which is another interesting.
It's maybe more of an adrenaline or control thing.
Yeah. That's one of the theories. Yeah, and I read that robbers or kidnappers will now ask for the money in used bills to limit tracking. I don't know if this is true, but Reddit's Explain It Like I'm 5 usually knows more than I do about pretty much everything.
True.
Thanks, Reddit. And then I was like, what would you do if you found a bag of money?
Keep it.
Yes, right?
Oh, if it was that much money, I would be so delighted that I had solved a fucking mystery. I would absolutely go turn it in.
Oh my God.
Wait, what if you found only like $5,000, not $200,000?
Well, they only found $5,000, but it was in 86 or 82.
Yeah, like that's what.
Keep it.
Because I had that same thought. I was like, good on the family for turning it in. But then I was like, obviously they knew it was part of something crazy
Yeah.
if it was that much cash in one spot.
Okay, I'm going to refrain from saying keep it all together, but I would keep some of it.
So
How would they know how much you had really found originally? You might as well keep a little. Then you get the best of both worlds. You're being a good person and you get a little extra cash.
yeah, and there were some bills missing from one of the $100 bills.
Yeah, honey.
Yeah. So, there were some bills missing from that stack. Okay, speaking of Stack then talks about another skyjacking that occurred 5 months later. He tells us that in April 1972, Richard McCoy, a former Green Beret skydiver, which I wrote, I bet he got laid all the time, extorted an airline for $250,000. The show takes a photo of his face, puts it next to the sketch of D.B. Cooper, and I guess they look similar because I'm super...
Because they're men? I mean,
I'm so
vaguely,
bad at
always
that.
in these scenarios, it's like, okay, I guess I could
Yeah.
sort of make him look like that in my head.
If I was ever the victim of a crime and I had to give a description...
oh, I think about that all the time.
I don't know what people weigh or how tall they are.
No.
I would be like, he was somewhere between 160 and 400 pounds, between 5'3" and 6'3".
I think about that all the time. I don't think I'm good at describing faces or bodies or anything.
Yeah.
I thought that about one of our stories recently because it was like two children giving a description and they gave it like the age range. Children have no idea.
Yeah,
in an age
they're
range.
like, old?
He was 50 and he's like, 30 or something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They think 20-year-olds are
Old people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I guess it looks the same. And I said, it doesn't matter because Florence, the flight attendant, tells us that the sketch was wrong all along and never looked like Cooper to begin with. I was like, Florence, did you tell anyone else that? Did they ignore her if she did?
Yeah.
Like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
So at UM's request, a forensic artist from then LA County Sheriff's Department named Malin Coleman, who drew the famous Night Stalker sketch.
Oh,
I
what?
wasn't-
Good tidbit.
Yeah.
Yeah, girl. That's so amazing.
I'm like, 1971, LA,
Yes.
California. And I was like, there was some shit happening around that time in LA. And I bet he did something cool. And it was like, I Googled
Well,
it.
and they're
I
like,
love it.
this one's shitty. We need a better one. Who do we ask?
Yeah. The fucking Night
Yeah,
Stalker guy.
awesome.
Yeah. So he came to work with Florence on a new sketch. And I have to say, now I get why the reenactment guy looked nothing like the Cooper drawing.
Yeah.
Because that was the
Yes.
first thing I thought.
I thought that too.
I was like,
where's
this guy-
that skinny nose?
Yeah, I was like, where's that skinny nose? And this guy looks like he's 45 or 50.
Yeah.
Like 80s for 45 or 50, which is old.
70. Yeah.
Old. The new sketch has Cooper older with larger features, and we'll post it.
And so they show her describing it.
Yeah.
This is over 15 years now.
Yeah. Well, and she
Later.
says something like, I remember every single thing about
And that's what I mean
Well-
by the trauma he caused. Like,
So-
yes, no one got hurt, but she's traumatized.
Well, yeah. And remember in the note, like you kind of like shortened it, but what he said was like, I have this bomb, like sit next to me.
Oh, sit next to me.
So he
That's
forced her to sit next to him. She was probably terrified of what was about to happen to her. She memorized that face.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even
So
think about that.
sad.
Although I read later somewhere that all of the flight attendants agreed that he looked like that sketch.
The first one.
Yeah. So I don't know if then Florence was like,
What happened?
I don't know. I couldn't find any information why she changed
Like,
her
it
mind.
sounds like,
We'll get to the flight attendants in a minute. I said if an actor had to play the role of the sketch of D.B. Cooper, it would be Clark Gregg, the actor who plays Phil Coulson in the Avengers and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. And that is the first time I have
Cute.
cast one of my stories. I'm super excited about it. He looks exactly like him. All right, are you ready for my update? because
Yeah.
it's like it's steep. Oh God, it's long.
Wait, hold on. Should I pee then?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, ready?
Ready.
So here are my updates. So I'm going to go into updates for various points in the story. It isn't just a general update about Cooper because there are different elements of the story that I found interesting that kind of bring some kind of closure or I thought were like fun factoids. So bear with me because I think it's as organized as I can possibly get. So there was another senior flight attendant who was allowed to leave with Schaffner, and her name was Alice Hancock. Tina Mucklow was the other flight attendant who was forced to stay on the plane. And while Florence Schaffner can't stop talking about her experience with DB Cooper, Tina Mucklow has never granted a single press interview.
Not one.
Not one.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about like the police? Like,
yeah.
okay.
So
The
she talked.
FBI were able to interview her.
Yes.
but-
Okay.
I think there are photos. Well, there are certainly photos of Alice Hancock being interviewed, but they show. I have a photo of Alice Hancock and Tina Mucklow testifying on the stand. Tina Mucklow is a queen. She's perfect. Her hair is amazing, and she looks like an extra from the set of Mad Men. It's awesome, and I'm fascinated that the person who spent the most time with DB Cooper will not talk to the general public or the press about it.
So that's the one who brought him the money, brought him the parachutes.
Yeah, and that's the
then
one that
what?
had to stay behind.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I find that really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
It is also interesting that like Florence was his point of contact for most of the time.
I think for the first half of the flight, it was Florence, but then like they were in the air for at least an hour. And he was with her. She was the one that got him the money. Imagine how she felt like running back and forth with 21 pounds of money and then 4 parachutes and having to be the one that stayed. But like, imagine watching your other 2 coworkers walk off, but you have to get back in the air.
Oh, I can't.
With 6 sticks of dynamite and a totally crazy person, you know, like, so maybe that's why she doesn't talk about it. Like when you were talking about trauma.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
for
what I was gonna say.
Florence-
Maybe she just really does not want to talk about it.
Yeah. And like for Florence, maybe her trauma is deep, but the way she heals is through talking about it. But for Tina, maybe she's just like, no. Yeah, that I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
And also they don't mention Alice Hancock at all, but she was on the flight too. So maybe she was in first class.
Yeah. So
because she was the
doesn't
senior
interact
flight
with him
attendant.
as much.
Yeah. Although Stack implied that DB Cooper didn't leave any fingerprints or any personal items, it's not totally true. FBI agents recovered 66 unidentified latent fingerprints aboard the airliner. Yeah. So they actually found too many fingerprints, not enough. And the agents also found Cooper's black clip-on tie, his tie clip, and 2 of the 4 parachutes.
It was a clip-on tie.
Yeah.
Honey.
And
It's ruined my image of him now.
but because his tie was clipped from the left, they think that he was left-handed.
Ooh, interesting.
So that's interesting. So one of the parachutes had been opened, and 2 of the suspension lines had been cut from its canopy. So I thought that was really strange. But then it was because he sort of like he took it apart to create the ropes to tie the money. I think is what he did. Because I was like, well, that's so weird that they would say that. But yeah, at first I was like, the FBI did it. But that's just me overreacting to literally everything. And like I said, Cooper thought he was being smart by asking for multiple parachutes. It implied that he might take others with him. And he did it to prevent tampering. Because if you give me 1 parachute, you're going to cut all the shit. And I'm going to die in the air.
That's-
if you give me
okay.
4,
Yep.
I have a 1 in 4 chance. If you like, you're not going to cut anything because 1 might go to a hostage, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then that one that wasn't working was not because they tampered
No.
on purpose. Yeah.
I totally thought he was going to wear all 4 of them. Just, I mean, you're jumping
I
from a
would.
liner. Like,
No,
I
that's
thought
not-
he was like, I'm just really going to make sure I don't die.
That's not how parachuting works.
Oh, that's how we would do it.
It's not like the more the merrier.
The more, the less you die.
No, totally
No?
false.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Just one per.
Okay.
She's an expert. She knows.
Oh yeah, I'm a real expert.
Well,
I had a
more than
panic
we
attack
are.
at 10,000 feet in the air.
That's true.
In 2007, the FBI disclosed that Cooper chose the older of the 2 primary parachutes supplied to him. Rather than the technically superior professional sport parachute, And that from the 2 reserve parachutes, he selected a dummy, which is the one that didn't work. They didn't know they put it in, and he didn't know that it didn't work. So they made a mistake, and he made a mistake.
Damn.
So he took the one that does not work.
As a reserve. So his first parachute opened,
Okay.
but his second certainly would not have opened. And the FBI says, we swear to God we didn't know, and I believe them because they think they would have thought it was going to a hostage.
Totally. They didn't know who would be wearing it.
Oh, yeah, I believe that, too.
Yeah.
So, sorry, how did they know eventually that they gave a dummy?
Oh, you know what? I don't know. That's an excellent question. I just have a unit with an inoperative ripcord attended for classroom demonstrations. And it had clear markings identifying it to any experienced skydiver as non-functional.
So, yeah, probably they were just in a rush, and then later, whoever they got the parachutes from was like, oh, actually, that was that's one of our demonstration ones.
Okay, that makes sense, because you're right. I don't know how they knew that. Ultimately, the search operation, arguably the most extensive and intensive in U.S. history, uncovered no significant material evidence related to the skyjacking. Also, the original drop zone was later determined to be incorrect. William Scott, who was flying the aircraft manually because of Cooper's speed and altitude demands, later determined that his flight path was significantly farther east than initially assumed. Additional data from a variety of sources, in particular Continental Airlines pilot Tom Bohan, who was flying 4 minutes behind 305.
Wow.
Yeah. He indicated the wind direction factored into the drop zone calculations had been wrong, possibly as much as 80 degrees. This and other data suggest that the actual drop zone was probably southeast of the original estimate in the drainage area of the Washougal River.
Yikes.
Yeah. Along with Cooper, the FBI really wanted to find the money, because that's a lot of money. A month after the hijacking, the FBI distributed lists of the ransom serial numbers to financial institutions, casinos, and racetracks, and other businesses that routinely conducted significant cash transactions, and then to other law enforcement agencies around the world. Northwest Orient, because they paid, offered a reward of 15% of the recovered money to a maximum of $25,000. In early 1972, U.S. Attorney John Mitchell released the serial numbers to the general public. And in early 1973, with the money still missing, the Oregon Journal republished the serial numbers and offered $1,000 to the first person to turn in a ransom bill. And then in Seattle, the Post-Intelligencer made the similar offer with a $5,000 reward. The rewards offers remained in effect until Thanksgiving 1974. And though there were several near matches, no genuine bills were found.
Gosh, it's so exciting. It's like Willy Wonka.
Yeah, right? Imagine being off by a digit. I know.
It's crazy.
Speaking of the money, the boy who found the 5K was 8-year-old Brian Ingram. In 1986, after protracted negotiations, the recovered bills were divided equally between Ingram and Northwest Orient's insurer.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So maybe you shouldn't take it because you might get it back.
That's what I was going to say to you.
Okay.
Or maybe you shouldn't take it because if you tried to spend it, like a SWAT team would fall from the sky and point guns at you, and like you're fucking 8-year-old Brian Ingram at a comic book shop surrounded by like a SWAT team of FBI people that are like, where'd you get the money? You know?
Right.
So maybe don't take all of the money, but take some of it. I'm with you, Eliza.
Okay.
Just a bit.
I'm getting judgy eyes.
My
from
conscience
Karlin.
is deep. If you do the right thing, most likely it's going to come back around.
That's true. And so, but they kind of did both.
Yeah.
Kinda.
And then it came around.
Kinda.
Karlin's conscious.
You can't kinda do the right thing. You can or you can't.
We're a fantastic trio because Karlin's conscience is deep. I have no moral compass, and Eliza is somewhere in the middle.
I fluctuate.
So Ingram sold 15 of his bills at auction in 2008 for $37,000.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
To date, none of the 9,710 remaining bills have turned up anywhere in the world.
So that's not dollars. That is the bills.
the amount
that
of
make up that
bills.
much money.
Yeah. Their serial numbers remain available online for public search, and there's literally a website, check6.com, where you can enter the information of a $20 bill you have, and they will determine for you whether or not it was part of D.B. Cooper's loot.
That's crazy.
Because the internet is magic.
What year are the bills printed from?
Oh.
Like if you're wondering, should I submit this bill?
I don't know. They were probably new bills. They said they were
Okay.
new. So 1971.
Okay.
One.
Since the location of the money was found so far away from the drop site, it has been suggested that maybe he dropped a bag while the back stairs were open. He was like fumbling around to jump. Like maybe one of the satchels came off of him.
That would be understandable looking at the reenactment of when he's almost about to
It looked like he was
jump.
going to fall. At some point, I was like, are they implying that this motherfucker fell?
It is totally possible. It was horrifying.
Yeah. I was like, ooh, be careful, DB Cooper.
Seriously.
I know.
But the family that found the bills, I thought they were like buried. They weren't really buried.
So they weren't really buried.
Okay.
A professional science person, no, I don't know, whoever's in charge of dirt
An
in
expert of
rivers.
holes.
Yeah, an expert of river dirt suggested that the way that they were buried was that they had slowly gotten covered over time. And apparently there was a really big flood. Oh, no. Apparently there are some theories that the explosion of Mount St. Helens may have covered up the rest of the money and any other evidence of DB Cooper's existence.
Which
Wow.
was 1980.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There was ash on my parents' roof from that.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I always forget that a fucking volcano exploded out here, you guys.
Oh yeah, we have family members that are like, I was driving on 205 when that happened, and they're ash covered.
Oh my God.
Remember
it's like,
when you were gone last summer and we had so
Yes.
much ash? It was like times 1,000 of that, which I
Big
can't imagine
chunks.
because there was a lot of ash.
Do you
even
remember
last
it?
summer. We weren't born. 80.
you guys.
Sorry, we weren't alive.
That's not fair because on Sunday you were like, we're older than that.
But if you
And
had
I'm
been
like,
here,
I didn't
if you
major in
had
math.
been here, you wouldn't remember it either.
Do you want to add anything to the eruption of
Sorry.
Mount St. Helens
Nope.
or how old I am?
Nope.
Sorry. I
Okay, let's
fucked
move
it up big time.
on. So this is an aside. It isn't really related to the case, but I found it super interesting that there is a random body count around this story that isn't actually associated with Cooper at all. So during the search, two local women stumbled upon, this is 1972. Two women stumbled upon a skeleton in an abandoned structure in Clark County. It was later identified as the remains of a female teenager who had been abducted and murdered several weeks before. I couldn't find out who the girl was, but that area is suspected to be the dumping ground for serial killer Warren Leslie Forrest. And the body of Carol Venezuela, age 18 years, was found in Clark County. She was later determined to be a victim of Ted Bundy.
Yeah, I was gonna say so much going on during this time.
Yeah. Crazy,
Yeah.
right? Like so many serial killers in the 70s on the West Coast. Then another unrelated body. In 2013, Earl Cossey, the guy who packed the parachutes for DB Cooper's escape and did the accidental one, was found murdered in his home in Woodinville, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle. Apparently, Cossey was quite a character. Quote, "They keep bringing me garbage," Cossey told the Associated Press in 2008 after the FBI brought him a silk parachute discovered by children playing at a recently graded road in Southwest Washington. "Every time they find squat, they bring it out, open their trunk, and I say, 'Is that it?' And I say, 'Nope, go away.' And then a few years later, they come back. But that didn't keep Cossey from having fun at the expense of reporters who covered the discovery. He told some who happened to call him on April Fool's Day that, yes, the shoot was in fact Cooper's.
Oh my gosh, I love him.
Yeah. But so like two like bodies pop up like that are sort of Cooper related where I was like, this is fun. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know whatever happened with Earl Cossey because there's only 24 hours in a day. The FBI profiled Cooper as someone who was familiar with the Seattle area because of metal alloys that were found on his tie. It was thought that he could have worked for Boeing or was maybe employed as a chemist or a metallurgist. Metallurgist? Is that am I okay with that? Metallurgist? I don't like saying that word.
Wow.
Nobody ever say that word again.
I don't like
Metallurgist?
it. Let's
Metal
not say it
allergist?
again.
That's just
Whatever.
metal.
I feel like you're maybe
Metal
mixing two
science.
words together.
I'm not.
No?
Let me
Okay.
fact
I
check.
believe you then.
Keep going.
Okay. Obviously, they suspected he was an Air Force veteran as well, aside from the parachuting, he also casually was talking to one of the flight attendants and he knew the distance of a close Air Force base, which is something most civilians wouldn't know.
It's a real word.
Thank you.
Metallurgist.
Yep.
Metallurgist. He also knew about the aircraft. He knew that the back stereo could be lowered during a flight, a fact never disclosed to civilian flight crews since there was no situation where on a passenger flight that would make it necessary. and that its operation by a single switch in the rear of the cabin could not be overridden by the cockpit.
Okay.
So he's like, flick that switch. The cockpit's like, close the door. He's like, I flick the switch.
Oh.
What poor user experience design.
Seriously.
Such bad design.
Anyone could have done that.
Anybody could have done that.
Any kid.
Yeah. I was going to say any crazy person.
I don't think they
but
let-
you're right. Any child.
Same
I don't
thing.
think they let
Same
kids
thing.
fly back
Same
then.
difference.
Sure.
Some of this knowledge was virtually unique to CIA paramilitary units.
Whoa.
So he could.
Yeah.
I
Though
keep forgetting you can't Google shit in the time of these stories.
I know.
God.
Well, and I like that idea of him. He's one of the men not using that in the 70s and 80s of, I'm in the CIA.
Yeah, because when you're in the CIA,
He's like, I was
you don't talk
definitely
about it.
not
Yeah.
in the CIA.
it's like Fight Club. Like the first rule of the CIA is
Yeah.
don't talk about the CIA.
Yes, I love it. Which would also account for him maybe being like across the ocean in other countries and
Yeah,
all that
for sure.
comic book stuff.
Yeah. Though he may have had experience with planes, the FBI doesn't think that he was a paramilitary jumper. The FBI concluded that Cooper lacked crucial skydiving skills and experience. Quote, we originally thought Cooper was an experienced jumper, perhaps even a paratrooper, said Special Agent Larry Carr, leader of the investigative team from 2006 until its dissolution in 2016. We concluded after a few years that this was simply not true. No experienced parachutist would have jumped in the pitch black night in the rain with a 200-mile-hour wind in his face, wearing loafers and a trench coat. It was simply too risky. He also missed that his reserve chute was only for training and that it had been sewn shut, something a skilled skydiver would have checked.
You'd think any normal person would check every single, like,
I mean, if you have the audacity to ask for poor parachutes, you better know what the fuck they're supposed to
this
look like.
thing holds my life.
Yeah.
You'd think. Okay.
Right? I love this quote because I'm like, yeah. So he said he also failed to bring or request a helmet, chose to jump with the older and technically inferior of the two primary parachutes supplied to him, and jumped into a -degree Fahrenheit wind chill without proper protection against the extreme cold. Couple that with the fact that they suspect he probably lost the money in the jump. If he did survive, he would have been screwed. But at this point, I'm thinking like he may have just been a little suicidal or just like a thrill seeker. I don't know. According to Himmelsbach, he was probably desperate, as most people who extort or steal large amounts of money are. Although it has been suggested that he was a thrill seeker, so it seems like nobody really knows his motivation. Okay, let's talk suspects. I'm going to cut some of these. Between 1971 and 2016, the FBI had literally thousands of suspects. Fame seekers, deathbed confessions. You know, I was like, I'm going to definitely do a deathbed confession just to
I
fuck
know
with
you
you.
are.
Oh my God.
I already know you are.
Oh, God, I can't wait.
Don't do it.
She might have a real deathbed confession.
Oh, great. Looking forward to it.
Get a bottle of wine. It's going to take a while.
Wait, was this before they must have written up a profile on him?
Yeah.
But
so-
at first it would have been early FBI profiles.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, it was only the 70s, so they were like
if they were even doing it.
desperate white male. Like, you know, they didn't know too much about, especially.
Right. The
so it's-
psychology of it. Or
It's very easy. Like, you watch Mindhunters, they're dealing with serial killers. Like, what could they have known about, like, a fairly new phenomenon of hijacking a plane?
True.
That's why, like, the only thing that could be sure maybe was that if he needed the money, he was desperate. Or he was a thrill seeker. So, like, they didn't have a lot to
sociopath.
they didn't have a lot to profile from. Like, in order to
That's true.
profile, you have to have things that relate to what you're looking at. But how many skyjackers were there before him? I honestly, I don't know, but I don't think a lot. So the first suspect is Kenneth Christensen. And these suspects all go out of order. They bounce from 1971 to 2016. I don't cover all of them. There's way too many of them. I'm already covering too many of them. In 2003, Lyle Christensen, Kenneth's brother, saw a documentary about Cooper and thought that Kenneth could be Cooper. At the time Lyle decided it was Kenneth, Kenneth had passed away conveniently, so he couldn't defend himself. Lyle said that Kenneth paid for his house in cash, and after being diagnosed with cancer, Kenneth reportedly told Lyle, "There's something you should know, but I cannot tell you." I'm totally going to do that. After his passing, the family found that he had gold coins, a valuable stamp collection, and $200K in the bank. but $200K in 2003 money.
Right.
So
So is he trying to just make it match
Yeah.
without thinking about
a bit, because here's what. They also found clippings of articles related to Northwest Orient Airlines in his home. The problem is this is all Lyle. And the second thing he did after calling the FBI was try to get in touch with Nora Ephron so he could sell her a screenplay.
Oh my God.
Poor Nora. How many people fucking came to her, right?
But also, has he ever seen a Nora Ephron film ever?
What did Nora Ephron make? I feel super bad. I know she's really famous.
Like When
but,
Harry Met Sally.
Oh, that's When Harry Met Sally.
I think he wanted to be like the Unabomber's brother
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
and get some fame.
A little bit of
that way.
fame. Mm-hmm. So the FBI said that Kenneth didn't pay for his house in cash. Basically, like the brother didn't know his brother at all.
Yeah.
So he didn't pay for his house in cash, and he sold acreage of land prior to his death, and that's where the money came from. So the FBI's like, he is not a suspect. I like this suspect, even though it's so over the top, but John List, the man who murdered his family 15 days before the Cooper hijacking, withdrew $200,000 from his mother's bank account and disappeared. He came to the attention of the Cooper task force due to the timing of his disappearance, multiple matches to the hijacker's description, because he does sort of look like him, and the reasoning that a fugitive accused of mass murder has nothing to lose. After his capture in 1989, List admitted to murdering his family, but denied any involvement in the Cooper hijacking. And like, I mean,
Wouldn't
That
you
would
just
be-
claim it all? if
wouldn't you just be like,
Yeah.
don't be super mad because I'm also DB Cooper, you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I might have killed my family, but I also did something super fun, you know? So the FBI no longer considers him a suspect. Theodore E. Mayfield was a Special Forces veteran pilot, competitive skydiver, and skydiving instructor who served time in 1994 for negligent homicide after two of his students died when their parachutes failed to open. Later, he was found indirectly responsible for 13 additional skydiving deaths due to faulty equipment and training.
Oh my gosh.
So that is 15 people who have died
quite
around
the body count.
Theodore E. Mayfield. His criminal record also included armed robbery and transportation of a stolen aircraft. I mean, so far.
Oh.
In 2010, he was sentenced to 3 years probation for piloting a plane 26 years after losing his pilot's license and rigging certificates. He was suggested repeatedly as a suspect early in the investigation, and according to the FBI, Ralph Himmelsbach, who knew Mayfield from a prior dispute at a local airport, he was ruled out, based partly on the fact that he called Himmelsbach less than 2 hours after Flight 305 landed in Reno to volunteer advice on standard skydiving practices.
Wait, he was ruled out because of that? Mm-hmm. I feel like that rules him in.
Because Himmelsbach, who was sort of friends with him, said that there's no way he could have gotten out of the wilderness in under 4 hours.
That's what I was thinking. The timing is too close.
In 2006, two amateur researchers proposed Mayfield as a suspect once again, asserting that they had assembled a convincing circumstantial case. They theorized that Mayfield called Himmelsbach not to offer advice, but to establish an alibi. And they challenged Himmelsbach's conclusion that Mayfield could not have possibly found a phone in time to call the FBI less than 4 hours after jumping into the wilderness at night. Mayfield denied any involvement and repeated a previous assertion that the FBI called him 5 times while the hijacking was still in progress to ask about parachutes, local skydivers, and skydiving techniques. He's like, these fucking guys are all over my dick about this. Meanwhile, Himmelsbach is like, we never did that.
Oh.
So, I don't know.
yeah.
It's a real he said, she said. The FBI says he was cleared as a suspect early on. There are a few more people who claim they were Cooper. They most likely weren't, and they were looking for attention. There's a ton of like drunk guys at bars, like, I have a storage unit with the money in it, you know, where you're
Right.
like, okay.
Especially in this case, if you claim to be him, you are not
You are
him
not him.
1,000%.
You're not him, of course.
Like,
Yeah. And I wrote, generally, the FBI says that these claims are totally unsubstantiated and there is zero evidence. Richard McCoy was a suspect because on April 7th, 1972, he staged the best known of the so-called copycat skyjackings. He boarded a United Airlines flight 855, a Boeing 727 with aft stairs in Denver, Colorado, and brandishing what later proved to be a paperweight resembling a hand grenade and an unloaded handgun, he demanded 4 parachutes and $500,000. After delivery of the money and parachutes, he ordered the aircraft back to the sky, bailed out over Utah. He left behind like instructions, fingerprints. Like he's a hot mess. He has no.
Find me.
Yeah, he is no DB Cooper. Like no way. He was arrested on April 9th with the ransom cash in his possession. After a trial and conviction, he received a 45-year sentence. He escaped. He was tracked down 3 days later, and he was killed in a shootout.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, which is like, if you're going to do all of that, that's the best way for you to go.
Yeah.
You know, as
Trauma
long as
till
no
the end.
FBI agents were harmed. So that brings us to the 2 current contenders that are crowd favorites currently in 2018. The first is Robert Rackstraw. And I'll post an image of him. They do a side-by-side with DB Cooper. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not good at this. Robert Wesley Rackstraw was a retired pilot, ex-convict, served in Army helicopter crew and other units during Vietnam War. He came to the attention of the task force after he was arrested in Iran and deported back to the U.S. to face explosive possession and check-kiting charges. While released on bail, he attempted to fake his own death by radioing a false Mayday call. They've arrested him in Fullerton with an additional charge of forging federal pilot certificates. Cooper investigators noted his physical resemblance to Cooper, but there was no connection that could be found. In 2016, Rackstraw reemerged as a suspect in the History Channel. They have like a bunch of wacky programs. And one of them is like about legends. So he was also written about in a book called The Last Master Outlaw. And the author compelled the FBI to release its Cooper case file under the Freedom of Information Act. They're saying that they know that Rackstraw did it. There's this really interesting thing where he was able, in the military, he worked with ciphers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Treasure.
And he was in 3 military units that all worked with different codes and ciphers. And he was the only person that was in those 3 military units and the only person that could know all of those
All
codes.
of them. Oh, cool.
And he left coded letters. And they think that in those coded letters is a confession. The last suspect is Walter Recca. He was a Michigan native, military veteran, an original member of the Michigan parachute team. He was proposed as a suspect by his friend Carl Lauren, a former commercial airline pilot, an expert parachuter, at a press conference on May 17th, 2018. So this like pretty recently happened.
Yeah.
This guy got in front of like this media station. It wasn't like a nationally syndicated station. And he held a quote unquote press conference and he was like, oh, it's my friend. Recca gave Lauren permission in a notarized letter to share his story after he passed away at age 80. He also allowed Lauren to tape their phone conversations about the crime over a 6-week period. In over 3 hours of recordings, Recca gave new details about the hijacking that the public had not heard before. He also confessed to his niece, Lisa Story. Using years of training to determine the location of the jump, Lauren concluded that DB Cooper landed near Clay Elum, Washington. I don't know where that is.
Me neither.
According to written testimony, Jeff Oskadiz, who is a Clay Elum, Washington native, was driving his dump truck near Clay Elum the night of November 24th, 1971, when he saw a man walking down the side of the road in inclement weather. He assumed the man's car had broken down and was walking to get assistance. However, he did not have room in his truck to pick him up. He continued toward his destination, right? Imagine driving by. You drove by DB Cooper. Although I would drive by DB Cooper because I drive by everybody.
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
pick anybody
No.
up.
And it was the night before Thanksgiving, too. So
Yeah.
and that's probably also how he remembers the exact night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very cool that it coincides with like a holiday because everybody's like,
Yes.
oh, right. Yeah,
That
the night before
yeah.
Thanksgiving.
So he's like, I want to go home or whatever.
Yeah. He continued toward his destination, the Tenaway Junction Cafe. After ordering coffee, the man from the side of the road also entered the cafe, looking like a, quote, drowned rat. The man sat next to him and asked if he would be able to give his friend directions if he called him on the phone. Oskadiz agreed to this and spoke with the man's friend, giving him directions to the cafe. Shortly after that, the driver left for Grange Hall to play in a band. I love this guy. And the man offered to pay for his coffee, and the two amicably parted. Lauren began his research for the witness after Recca described the landscape he saw while on his way to the drop zone. 2 bridges, some distinct lights, and his description of the exterior and interior of the cafe, as well as the encounter with the driver. He described the driver in detail, dubbing him Cowboy. Lauren consulted a map to find these particular landmarks and began making phone calls about the cowboy who had driven a dump truck, which, come on, it's Washington State.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Lauren was put in contact with, I'm going to say Osioditz, who recalled meeting the man that night, described what he was wearing and what he looked like, and who confirmed his identity as Rekka after seeing a photo Lauren sent him.
What?
I know. Super compelling stuff, right? Like,
I've never heard any of this.
yeah. Well, that's because, this just came out. I knew about some of the other ones, but this I was like, this is
Whoa.
super convincing, right?
Well, I also like that the guy that looked like a drone rat, he offered to pay for what's this guy's coffee? Like, he just got all this money, and he's like, yeah, I'll pay for that coffee.
You know what? It's on me.
I'm rich, bitch. I'll pay for that coffee.
He like pulls a wad out of
Yeah, he's got like a bunch of
wetsuit.
nylon strapped around him with like money just flying out like chicken feathers. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, yeah, it is compelling.
2016, Lauren took the information to publisher Principa Media. This is who he made the announcement with in May. I was reading about Principa. They were like, we didn't look for this guy. He came to us. Like, we don't know anything about this, but he wanted to do a press conference.
Okay.
And Principa Media consulted with a certified fraud examiner and forensic linguist with 45 years of investigative experience. He evaluated all the documents, including passports, ID cards, photographs, and newspaper clippings. And Koenig found no evidence of tampering or manipulation and deemed all documentation authentic and contemporaneous. After comparing Lauren's research to the available FBI records, he found no discrepancies that eliminated Rekka as a suspect. He also determined, particularly significant, that Oz DeKaz's statement of events on the night of November 24th, 1971 were identical to the account that Rekka had made 5 years earlier. The evaluator, his last name was Koenig, he publicly stated that he believes that Walter Rekka is D.B. Cooper.
And Walter Rekka's dead.
Walter Rekka is dead. He died in 2014 at age 80. So in 2016, this guy, Lauren, brought the information to Principa Media. It might have taken them 4 years to
Wow.
evaluate whatever kind of materials he brought. And then the examiner with 45 years experience was like, this is legit.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So the guy that came forward. Mm-hmm. How do you say his name?
I think we could say,
Whoever.
yeah,
Mr. O.
Mr. O.
Mr. O.
He knew this whole time.
I think it says
Like, he either knew this whole time or he just got directions to pick up his friend when he didn't know what he had just done.
he didn't know what he had just he didn't know anything about DB Cooper. It had just happened. So he's watching. This is not
Right. Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no-
It's not
Yeah.
immediate.
He's not a legend.
But I'm saying, like,
so he's driving down the road. He
Rekka
sees-
didn't say, I just did this thing.
No, Rekka. No, in 2008, Rekka confessed.
Okay, so
He
the
told
whole
Lauren
time- Okay.
via recorded phone call that he was DB Cooper.
Sorry, yeah, you had said that.
Yeah, he agreed to be recorded. So he did say that he was DB
Wow.
Cooper.
Okay, I like that better because the whole time I was like, God, this guy held this secret for his friend this whole time. I didn't like him as much. But
No.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know.
That is very
Isn't that
compelling.
cool? Yeah.
that's
So
cool.
that's the last and latest. Sorry, this is taking so long. Suspect
No.
update on DB Cooper. As of today, the case is considered cold and closed by the FBI, and they will only reopen the case if they're given the parachute or money evidence. So
Yeah.
even though
Wow.
people are like, "Oh no, it's this guy Rekka," the FBI is like, "No way, man. We've been doing this for way too long. We're not doing this again."
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the update, man.
Oh, it's amazing.
I know. Sorry that took like 2 hours.
No, nicely
Gosh,
done.
That was amazing.
Oh my gosh.
So-
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
do you think he made it?
Well, until you told this most recent thing, I was like, he just died upon.
Me too.
But that is compelling. Although still, if it were if it were Rekka, wouldn't we have seen some of that money? Like, wouldn't it have been traced?
Yeah. Well, some people were saying like he was just a thrill seeker. It was never about the money. Mm-hmm. So they don't even think he
Oh, so
jumped
he
with the
would-
money. They think he threw the money out of the plane
Gosh.
and he just
But
jumped.
then wouldn't more of it been
Which
found?
Yeah, because when I originally thought the money had been buried, I was like,
Yeah.
he definitely made it. He definitely was coming back to that
No.
later. But now that I know, it was just kind of like washed up.
Yeah, that's just like the river rising and ebbing.
It is even more frustrating if he didn't care about the money because it's like maybe that money's out there somewhere.
It might be. Let's go to the Washoe.
Oh my God. Flash forward to next week. It's just Eliza with a pickaxe in the middle of Washougal.
Yep. We'll do a special episode where I'm crying in waiters or something.
And Karlin and I are just laughing at you.
Yes, that's how
Drinking wine. How's it going, Eliza?
I love this trip so far.
Are we wealthier yet? All right. Well, that's the tale of
Allison,
D.B.
amazing.
Cooper.
I love
Good
it.
job.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening to part 1 of episode 5. You can tune in tomorrow for part 2. We're going to talk about the boys on the tracks and a really exciting sports clothing story.
And jewelry.
Yeah, don't forget the jewelry. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.